This episode is sponsored by Word of Life, a religious education curriculum that calls students, parents, teachers, and catechists to pursue holiness in their daily lives. Created in partnership by the Augustine Institute and Ignatius Press, Word of Life helps Catholic schools and parishes meet the challenges and needs of proclaiming the gospel today. Word of Life uses 4 key themes to awaken an authentic Catholic identity and demonstrates how the truths of the faith speak to the human heart. The curriculum strives to support parents in their role as primary catechists of their children. Through interactive activities, videos, and other digital resources, students and parents can benefit from faith formation materials in the classroom and at home. The Word of Life curriculum explores who we are as human persons, what our purpose in life is, why the faith is relevant in our modern culture, and how to live a truly integrated life of virtue through the graces offered by the Church. Word of Life is proud to serve over 50,000 students in more than 700 schools and religious education programs across the United States. Learn more about Word of Life and how to bring it to your parish or school by visiting wordoflifeseries.org, wordoflifeseries.org. Hey everyone, welcome to Conversations with Jackie and Bobby. We're here with a part 2 with our friend Andrew Laubacher, musician, jack of all trades, lived with us for years. I called him the adult son.
1 year.
Years. You were hardly there.
That's a good point.
So it feels like a year.
That's a good point.
You crashed our wedding.
I did.
That's how I met you. Mm-hmm. Like, who's this clown? And we've kind of been stuck together.
Yeah.
You're like my younger brother in ministry.
You're like my older brother, like in real life.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about health predominantly and some of the work you're getting into. Mm-hmm. It's been such a joy to watch you grow and, dare I say, mature. Before we get into all that,
That's a scary thought.
apple cider vinegar. Cheers.
So we've been doing this for years, okay? We'll talk about the health benefits later.
Oh, I regret that.
Feel the burn. It's a deep burn.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Back to the show. So, Andrew, in part 1, you talked about your testimony about healing.
Yeah.
The gifts the Lord's called you to walk in. And for this conversation, we're going to focus in on health. Did you guys talk about grace building on nature?
We hit it a little bit.
I've just been always fascinated by that overlap of we don't compartmentalize our faith,
Right.
and our calling to be disciples of the Lord away from the health of our body. Mm-hmm. It's the both and there's a kind of a messy middle of the aesthetic life and people called to go without, to embrace suffering, hardship, penances. There is a place for that. There's a place to grow in grit and discomfort. Mm-hmm. But there's also we are given our bodies. Our bodies are a gift, and we are our bodies.
Yes.
So to look at it with the lens of reverence for the body, which also includes taking care of your body. It's God gives us His grace, but we also have to supply the nature for which the grace can operate within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many places to go with that, but I would probably give you my quick genesis of how I got interested in the ideas that you're sharing. Because I heard this 6 million times in my theology degree. Grace builds on nature. Grace builds on nature. We're talking about grace building on nature, but I don't think we're really sharing what's that next step look like.
Yeah.
So, being in the evangelization world, right out of college, I literally just started going on the road full time, speaking, leading worship. Obviously very moved and transformed by this Holy Spirit experience at Franciscan, praying for the sick, praying for a lot of people. And I'm very philosophical minded. I would like to think I'm a critical thinker. I am a little rebellious just in general. I don't like going with norms at all. And I literally remember this one day. I was working at JSR at the time. This was before I think I lived with you guys. But I just remember thinking one day, what are humans supposed to eat? And it was this thing where I was just there's got to be, the vegans all can't be right, and the carnivores can't all be right. There's got to be something, I was designed to eat. Like the shark doesn't wake up and decide, you know what, I'm just going to try some like, you know, beef jerky today, you know, or whatever. Like they eat what they were intended to eat. And I remember on the road traveling, obviously you have a lot of downtime, like in airplanes and in buses and cars. And I just kind of noticed, like I grew up pretty crunchy granola. Like my mother used Shackley products and like went to a like co-op with moms for healthy food. So I realized this is kind of part of my pedigree. But in high school, I was partying, I was doing drugs, I was eating Taco Bell and the munchies and just destroying my body. You know, I mean, eating horribly.
Well, even on the road, traveling for these events.
Oh, yeah. And this was nothing, dude. At Franciscan, I was exhausted all the time. The cat food, Father Dave, if you're listening to this, I hope you've changed the cafeteria food. It was like 3 grades above jail food. And like you would have bowel movements for the first week that you were back that were pretty extensive. So
nutrition.
Yeah. So my experience there, anyway, I'd never experienced really what does this grace building on nature mean? And then I started to ask questions, and that obviously just led me down rabbit holes in nutrition and wellness. And at this time, I'm praying over people, and I'm realizing that a lot of the data that I'm reading and seeing that like 12% of our population is metabolically healthy, that 1 in 4 Americans now has 1 or more chronic illnesses, that 1 out of every 6 Americans now is either on 1 or more, you know, pharmaceutical drugs. I started to notice that all these events, all these people were wanting me to pray over them for healing when it was largely due to diet and lifestyle and their environments. So in a combination of like my own study, getting into nutrition, functional medicine, and being in this healing world where I actually would show up places and want people to be well. Mm-hmm. Like it got hard for me to go and just do worship and play songs when kids would come up to me with anxiety, with depression, with suicide, all these things that we were just trying to pray away, that I'm not negating the power of prayer, but I think largely I've called it like a postmodern Gnosticism or postmodern like Manichaeism, where we've essentially forgotten about the body and we've just forgotten that God has given us a body and that actually we can't pray away things that are affecting our physiology. So this happened, I want to say starting, I've been trying to root it back probably like 2016, where I started to realize, okay, I'm praying over these people for things that are largely due to this grace building on nature. Like no one's talking about nature in the Catholic world. And sadly, most of our presbyterate and priests are overweight. Youth ministers, I mean, not taking care of themselves. I mean, the list is like long, you know, of that. And obviously when you bring this stuff up, it hurts, you know, and it's a little offensive, but I'm willing to enter into this space for the sake of people healing and actually people being well and experiencing, I believe, the fullness that's actually found in living a Judeo-Christian worldview, fully integrated, fully alive. And it's been an incredible journey. And I know, like, yeah, we've been kind of on it together. But that's kind of where the genesis started. I just noticed on the road so many kids coming up to me with anxiety and depression. And it just wasn't, I realized, like, it just wasn't something I could just pray over you for, you know?
Yeah, it was the gluten.
It was for sure the glyphosate in the gluten.
You know, the beautiful thing, and I just kind of want to let you loose on what you've been learning and what's got your interest as of late, but it's been beautiful to see in like the Catholic world. You've got ministries like Reform Wellness.
Yes.
Jackie Mulligan was, I think, the second guest we had on our podcast.
Nice.
About like reverencing the body and the soul. So it's all of it. So nutrition, yes, but also rest, leisure, functional movement and exercise, all these things that can become an idol in themselves. You talk about like the postmodern Gnosticism. It's like, well, if God has been shoved away, I got to worship something. Mm-hmm. And for many people, that is diet and nutrition. For others, it is the body. Mm-hmm. You know, how can I have the perfect body? Which I'm all for health and lifting heavy things, but the body... I mean,
you also have the perfect body, so you can't really say that.
The box of Cheez-Its is calling me in the back. But all these things I just noticed, like, I love learning all this stuff, but there was always like, but it becomes an end in itself.
Correct.
If God is not the center.
Correct.
So it's like when you order all things, you put first things first, as C.S. Lewis said, like, like it all works. Otherwise, and sometimes I think maybe you have Christians who have a bad taste in their mouth from how much diet and exercise is worshipped.
Totally.
And so you swing to the other extreme of, well, it doesn't really matter. And
especially in the spiritual life, when you bring this up, there's so many people, priests, Catholics, doesn't matter, clergy, whatever, where you bring this stuff up, and it's like, it's this rejection, that this is even worth investing in, because like you said in the beginning, we obviously have this rich and beautiful tradition of penance, of denying the body, of really trying to control the flesh, and I remember watching like Padre Pio and these guys that were, whipping themselves, and like I thought I had to like do that to be able to like control the flesh. And so I do think there has to be this integration conversation where it's like, if you are going to do the diet and lifestyle thing simply for a way that you're going to look, you're never going to be happy. This is why a lot of that industry in the influencer world and the wellness world, these people are extremely depressed and anxious because they're obviously the media is heightening these deeply psychological evolutionary roots of really caring immensely what other people think. You add that on with self-image and filtering, and I mean, we've created a pretty toxic environment in the health and wellness world that I think a Catholic approach really is different insofar as the end is love. Like my reason at this point for exercise, and I mean, I'm in like the weeds with this stuff, right? So I'm sauning and ice bathing, and I have a pretty locked in nutrition regimen, and I get lots of sun exposure. And I mean, go down the list of things. Like for me, it has allowed me to serve well. And I like this idea of being strong to serve. Like, especially wanting a family, wanting to be a dad. Like I want to be able to provide. I want to be able to be strong and present. And I think this idea too of like, you never know when you're going to go, right? This whole death thing.
Sure.
Let's bring up the whole death thing. I actually have some stats here. This is a great book called Dopamine Nation by Anna Lembke. And this just kind of goes into some of the stats of where we're at physically and obviously some of the realities of the data of our health. So this is what she says. 70% of the world global deaths are attributed to modifiable behavioral risk factors like smoking, physical inactivity, and diet. The leading global risks for mortality are high blood pressure, tobacco use, high blood sugar, physical inactivity, and obesity. In 2013, this number is like way higher now. An estimated 2.1 billion adults were overweight, compared with 857 million in 1980. There are now more people worldwide, except in parts of sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, who are obese than who are underweight. So like the numbers there, we're living in this really strange time of over convenience. So she even talks about as well, like 100 years ago, your average workday was 10 to 12 hours of moving and of labor. And now we have, because of the goods of technology, which we're going to we'll get into the complex relationship that the world is experiencing right now with technology. But, we've largely obviously created so many conveniences that they're actually making us sick.
Right.
So we're living in this biological mismatch where we're sitting all day. We're not getting any sun exposure. 100 years ago, we were outside 90% of the time. Now we're inside 90% of the time. Our food is highly palatable, highly processed, highly filled with glyphosate and herbicides and pesticides. And at the same time, all these incredible things like Uber Eats and Uber drivers and planes and trains and cars, like they're making us sicker than ever before. So I feel like the approach as a Catholic, and this gets into some John Henry Newman, or Cardinal Newman development of doctrine idea, like how do we apply gospel principles that have been in the deposit of faith in the church and the catechism and apply them to our situation now? And I think that's what I'm interested in regards to the body, because I think largely we're living in a world that we have never been designed to live in. And another book here we'll get into with Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism, talks about how we were not wired to be constantly wired. And so just, our lack of movement, our lack of sunshine, our lack of human communication, this is prior to 2020. I've just noticed, and even in myself experienced this physically, like I had really bad anxiety. So the more I started studying the anxiety and the microbiome and gut health, realizing that I went through inner healing, I did deliverance prayers, I did all those things, but my diet was crap, And once I changed a lot of that up, there's been huge, like radical improvements in my mental health with exercise and sleep and diet. So yeah, those are some of the things that I'm contemplating, thinking about, and most of us are just living in this hurry, fast-paced lifestyle that we're not kind of even able to take time and reflect. Like, is this how God designed us to live? Now, this does not mean, like, most people hear that and be like, Andrew, I can't just go live, in the forest in a cave when I have kids and a life and work. And I don't think that's actually what you need to do. I think there's habits that you can build throughout your day that can create wellness in your life. And this kind of all gets back to this death point I was talking about. Obviously, to a certain degree, we have no idea and no control over when or how we're going to die. Now, I do think we do in some capacity. If you constantly smoke, don't move, never get any sunshine, eat horribly, like you're probably going to die of one of the top 4 killers. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, COVID barely made number 3, and some other type of chronic illness. So I do think God does give us free will. He gives us the autonomy to choose habits that can create healing, that actually can create longevity, and then you detach from the outcome. Like at this point, I am trying to do my best to live a virtuous life with the habits that I know for wellness and be detached with the outcome, because I could obviously just get hit by a car walking out here.
Right.
Now most people hear that and be like, well, then, eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and that's fine. And it's like, well, no, there's a little bit more depth. Like there is fasting and feasting. Mm-hmm. Like we should enjoy good sugar sometimes. I think the idea that, people here in the wellness world is like no fun, you can't eat anything fun. It's like, well, actually, if you live a liturgical life, you can feast when the church feasts and eat some sugar, man. Mm-hmm. Like if you're not eating sugar 90% of the time, a little bit of sugar ain't gonna kill you. Like it's not this super boring, depraved life, of like health and wellness. Like it actually feels good to feel great.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I kind of think about that I know people kind of like, push back on, because like, dude, we're all going to die, bro. It's like, frater memento mori, remember your death. Like, I think that's faulty thinking. I think we have the autonomy to choose ways that we can be healthy insofar as that allows us to love our families, to serve at our jobs, to do well in the workforce, to do good in the world. Like that's why I work out. That's why I exercise. That's why I study. And I've found that those things for me have improved my mental health drastically. It's not perfect. But those things are kind of what I've been contemplating.
We could go in 13 different directions.
Yeah, you decide.
Off of this one.
You decide.
The, the death anxiety. Can we like briefly get on that?
Great.
Because it is this tension of like, I watched Limitless with Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was fascinating, like how this actor puts himself through all these extreme situations for the sake of health and longevity and cold water exposure, like stress, like having to walk across a skyscraper
stressed me out.
To deal with like essentially doing mindfulness exercises to decrease stress in the moment. Like you control what you can control. Fasting. There was a fasting episode, which as a Catholic watching it was hilarious.
Totally.
He's like this totally jacked guy who probably eats 3,500 calories a day, really struggling with fasting.
Totally.
But the very last episode, it's on embracing your death. Mm-hmm. And there's so much of like the psychological work that I've been learning through Catholic psych. Like the death anxiety is what we start with. Like that looms large. Like we are going to die. Mm-hmm. And as a species that knows that, that's in the back of our heads at any given time, there is a rebellious like fight against it, which as a Catholic, you'd say, yeah, that's right. Because we are not meant for death. Mm-hmm. We're meant for life and life eternal. And so there is a rightful, made up that word, combat against death. Mm-hmm. However, but it's also the tension of the both and. We have to realize we are going to die. Mm-hmm. So then how ought we live?
Yeah, I still think it connects too with this idea that like just because we're going to die doesn't mean we don't treat our bodies as a temple of the Holy Spirit and do tough things in our modern culture, which we have this genetic human propensity for convenience, for the path of least resistance. Like we're looking for the easiest thing. This is like even in physiology, lifting 101, like your body will do what would be the least painful thing, So
I mean, like the desire to survive
right,
is so strong.
so strong.
And so that usually means taking the path of least resistance.
Yes.
To conserve energy,
Right.
to
Yes.
limit danger, exposure to danger, etc.
Yes. Thermodynamics, conservation laws, all the fun science stuff. But I do think, like for me, I've experienced even I felt like that more acutely with my own anxiety journey. Like that was because when you're having a panic attack, you're afraid of the worst case scenario, which is death.
Right.
So for me, Jesus, specifically, obviously impacting and sharing that like he came to defeat sin and death. Like no other Buddha never said that. Like Stalin never said that. There's multiple figures and historical characters that never, face those two things head on. Peter Kree's new book, or it's not that new, but I think it's Doors in the Walls, talks about transcendence. And I mean, for me, what has, I don't know if this is where you want to go with this, but just the idea.
Where you want to go.
Yeah, well, just the idea of like being afraid of death. Like when you're in your mother's womb, I mean, that's the world that you know. Mm-hmm. And you get born into this whole new world, and it's like another birth is going to happen to us. Right now, we're in this womb, and we don't know what's on the other side, and it's terrifying. And obviously, we want to speculate, and we get some stuff from the saints, we get some ideas, but we really don't know what's next. And the possibility is that it's nothing, and it's an empty abyss, and it's dark, and it's death, and just that's it. Or the possibility, like the first time for us, where we were born into this new world, and it was, whoa, it was incredible and complex and scary. It's, to me, plausible that it's possible that our death is a new birth into a life that is something like, something that we can never, ask or imagine or understand. And
Eye hasn't seen. Ears not heard.
So, but I think even in regards to that, I do think we have way more autonomy in the sense of how we relate to death with our bodies than we're usually told. Like there's just like legit data. Like if you do this behavior, this will be the result. From that behavior, most likely. Now they have stories of these centenarians, living 117 years, and they smoked a cigarette every day and had a glass of whiskey. And these are outliers. These are genetic outliers.
Had a Dr. Pepper every day.
Yeah, had a Dr. Pepper every day. So I mean, you should probably not. I mean, with the data on our experience now, it's there's a baby running around.
It's your goddaughter.
That's my goddaughter.
On the way to the potty.
On the way, you go, girl. Keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
That's great. I just think we do have more autonomy insofar as that, like building virtuous acts. I like this idea of habits for healing, which, Hippocrates talked about this, the godfather of physicians, talked about these accumulating sins, which obviously he was using that more. Actually, I guess it's in what the term means. Sins means to miss the mark. So the more consistently, you miss the mark, these sins against nature, you will be sick, you will get disease. So I think God gave us the blueprint of our existence and actually the habits for healing that are found in the scriptures, like serving and obviously living in community and living in worship. Like these things actually create healing. So I see at least the Catholic worldview and the Christian worldview as a way of, she's so cute.
I know. She's now behind the camera.
Just stay there. You just stay behind the camera.
Yep, working IT.
I just think when we're facing death and facing these big ideas, facing your non-existence, I don't think it negates the call for us from, I'd say, our faith, really to cultivate and live out virtue and live out, habits for healing. And I think all the data points to that. Like I was saying, the community, friendship, serving, like these things create happiness and health. And obviously maybe not having, like multiple sexual partners and not doing drugs and these things that, like, obviously people might look at some of religion just as this utility tool to be able to control the masses. I actually see it as a path to real authentic freedom, and obviously specifically in the call of Christ.
Well, and we know that religion can go askew, and people can be wounded by it when it's too legalistic and it's not based on love and flourishing and really worship of the divine God who wants our flourishing, wants our fullness. But so much of it, again, it's not because religion said it so. It's you have religious systems recognizing what makes mankind happy.
Right. Yeah, and I think obviously the fasting and the feasting, like we know fasting's good for us. This isn't new that like epidemiology and randomized clinical control trials are showing that fasting helps. You know, it's like we've kind of known this for like thousands of years, you know. Now, how do you apply that to yourself? That's where a health coach comes in, and I'll help coach you through it. illuminedwellness.com. You can check it out.
I had a session with you
You
recently,
did?
which I was blown away. Honestly, you were very professional. I said, "Oh,
it's
and
just-
my Andrew's growing up."
Yeah, I'm just starting, but it'll be good. But kind of in regards to the death stuff, you want to hit some of the tech.
Yeah, from there, tech, because I think tech also gives the illusion of
Yes.
like we have more control than we do, and we're going to somehow live forever. Like you've got
Yep.
the stuff of science fiction and having like your head in a jar, like Futurama, that people like are speaking with some kind of seriousness.
Yes.
And again, I'm all about living as long as you can well. But then there's the artificial like hubris.
Yeah. No, I think
It's
there's
like-
a point where, yeah, injecting peptides and stem cells and all these I mean, you're in the health and wellness world. There's obviously an extreme.
You're playing God.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Billy Graham even said that technology has given us the illusion that we are immortal. And my work now, so I work for an organization now called Humanality. Humanality, A-L-I-T-Y. Humans engaging reality is the idea. And this is a movement that started last year at Franciscan with this unplugged scholarship where we're paying kids money to give up their smartphones and take on dumb phones to fight tech addiction, porn addiction, phone addiction. And I think anytime I share that initially, every person I've talked to so far is just like, wow, like we totally need that. I haven't had one person say, no, I think we need to be on our tech more, you know? And if you've seen Social Dilemma or you've seen some of these, you know, films.
Well, we can all speak anecdotally.
Correct.
How it has such a grip on us and our attention.
Yes.
And say, yeah, I probably shouldn't be on it as much as I am.
Right. Yeah. So I have some fun stats with like kind of the this kind of first engagement with the social media world. Obviously, was it 2007 the smartphone came out?
2006, 2007.
Yeah, like, and then obviously 2010 with, you know, the Instagram, the Facebooks, and we're in this social experiment. And I'd say now we have enough data to say that like this is doing more damage than good. So this is where this gets mixed and complicated, right? Because so much good, like what we're doing right now,
Ta-da.
has come from media, has come from YouTube and these other platforms. I'd say at this point, like our mission with Humanality is to help people live a more intentional relationship with technology. So we want to help people discover freedom. And in this book too, Dopamine Nation, you'll kind of get the whole lowdown on like the technology at this point is an addiction. So it's actually in the category, in the DSM, under behavioral addictions. It's like in that category now. So when we talk about things like moderation and things of that nature, those are conversations that we could have probably with 25-year-olds who have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. But giving these technologies to kids, at this point, the evidence is overwhelming that it's largely detrimental. So right now what's happening with our organization is that we're talking to schools and universities, and the stories that people in the administrations are sharing, just with the mental illness, the anxiety, the depression.
Well, we both worked at schools.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You saw, I mean, the stories are crazy. So really our mission and goal is to help people engage in reality and be human again. And this totally connects with everything we're talking about with wellness, because there's a couple things that technology has done to us. We'll start with the doom and gloom, and then we'll get happy at the end.
Please.
Yeah, let's start dark.
Please.
So we'll start dark. So like here's like a list of things. This is compiled from a couple of these books that you know, have been implications of the technology. So obviously increased loneliness, digital exhaustion. It's been mood altering. The internet obviously attracts more dark emotion that gets more eyes on
like anger,
on these kind of darker emotions. It's created an increase just in attention seeking. And the average, this is a 2015 study, there's probably more recent ones, but the average teenager is on the device 9 hours a day. It's far worse now. We're having difficulty building friendships and social skills. Our identity formation is being askew. Obviously an increased fear of missing out, pornography, comparison. I mean, there's a list, right? So a lot of these things aren't happening just out of the blue. So these technologies were created for them to be as addictive as possible. And this is pretty well documented. But the results of this type of addiction, specifically in regards, first maybe we'll start with girls, like they're actually having a more difficult time with social media than men. So there's been a 50% increase in depression from teenage women from 1990 to 2017. Men are obviously struggling way more with the pornography and the that addiction. And at this point, the checking the phone is about 85 times a day on average. I mean, 85 times. And obviously within that, this kind of first point of contact we've had with this isn't even obviously talking about what's coming next with AI, but this initial contact with the media, it's difficult because, like, at least even in the Catholic world, like, you guys are evangelizing through this, right? I evangelized through it. I had social media. I deleted mine in 2018 simply due to my own addiction to it. I'm the first to acknowledge I had addiction to all the platforms. It was leading me to lust. It was leading me to narcissism. So, like, my album came out, and I think that next year, like, I deleted it all. And, my manager at the time was like, this is a horrible idea. And it probably was, but it actually, like, helped in every capacity, in my spiritual life, in my purity, and just even my anxiety. So I found this immense fruit from going to this. I went back to a flip phone, and I know this is like extreme and weird, but I just like knew something was off in me, how I was relating to this technology and what it was doing to me. And so now, we're at a place where we're years kind of down the line where the data's out. Like, it is more, I'd say at this point, and you can push back at any point you'd like, there's more detriment due to what social media is doing to our dopaminergic pathways.
Ooh, big word.
Big word. And just our own, like, brain development that is alarming enough to where I can't with good conscience say that, like, any kid, I'm at the point where it's like, I think 25 is a good time to get a smartphone. So this is a bold statement. I know there's like so many people that disagree with that. And this isn't obviously something that everyone has to do. But these devices, at least in the hands of teenagers and children, is hijacking our neurochemistry, our biology, that is depleting our capacity to be human. So Humanality's solution right now is we're helping college students kind of detox, right? So we pay them scholarship money. They give up their smartphone, take on a dumb phone. I just had a meeting with 3 of the kids today. Like, the most amazing stories of, like, what they're experiencing, how much better they're feeling, like the conversations, their relationships, their dating. I mean, it's like down the list, just so incredible to watch. So this is part of my own story. Like, I was addicted myself, and now I've kind of found this freedom through this intentional relationship where I still listen to some YouTube videos. I have what's called a light phone. Mm-hmm. So it's just texting, calling, that's it. And I, just recently did this going in this new position. But I think to hit some of these kind of spiritual, physical, mental, if you're going to hit any of those topics, I think we have to start bringing this conversation to technology and the phone specifically. And even the other day, I was at a golf tournament and saw 60-year-old dudes, 65-year-old dudes, probably 70-year-old dudes, all sitting at a table, all on their phones, not talking to each other. I mean, how many couples do you see at dinner just scrolling, not talking? So it's very difficult to say that this is just, completely neutral device. I mean, I think at this point, you have to create some type of relationship with these devices or they'll control you. And we want to help people discover ways to do that. But I think just connecting to the death part, if we're going to hit that, and just the health and wellness area, largely what Cal Newport talks about in digital minimalism, everyone should read this book. He talks about this solitude deprivation, which I find very interesting. And I noticed this in my own life, and at least in regards to my spiritual life, we have no moments throughout the day where we're not being stimulated by some type of entertainment or consumption. And the implications of that are pretty vast. And I've just even noticed the other day, it was funny. I had my light phone. I ordered some food at a restaurant. And I would usually start scrolling at that point and just, getting through the time, getting through the moment, and I just kind of sat there and just looked at people.
Like a weirdo.
Like a weirdo. And I saw some people scrolling, look up at me and then look down because we made eye contact, And it's just, I don't know. I do think there's something so deeply spiritual happening where we're just losing our capacity to be present to the moment, where that's exactly where God said we would meet him. And this doesn't mean that everyone needs to get their smartphone. This doesn't mean that everyone needs to go live in a cave. But I do think we have to start having conversations, especially with our own lives, of taking an inventory. How much time are we spending on these devices? And is this valuable time? Like my computer is where I work off of. It's an incredible device. Like it does an amazing amount of things. And a lot of people's lives are on these things. We're not asking people to give up their computers. But I think we have to just start assessing the time. Like I was at probably 5 hours a day on my screen time without social media, just news. I love the weather app. Anyone shout out to the weather app? All I would do is like scroll on my weather app and my Delta app. I had no social media, no nothing, emails and stuff, about 5.5 hours. I did math, simple, 5 hours times 7 times 52 times 365. In 20 years, if I just stayed at that 5 hour time frame, I would be on my phone 4 years. And I looked at that number, and that was kind of the moment for me where I was just like, man, think about how much time we're missing just scrolling and maybe listening to great content, maybe listening to Bobby and Jackie, maybe listening to Father Mike Schmidt and Ascension Presents, But are we creating an environment where we can utilize these technologies for good, but not get addicted to them? And that's at least the question that I'm excited to bring up. But I think parents are desperate for help. I can't tell you how many people I've already talked to that parents are like, what do my kids addicted to video games and their phone? And so we're partnering with some organizations that can help, like Screen Strong. But if you go to humanality.org, you can kind of see more of these testimonies. These stories are just incredible. So obviously I'm very passionate about these topics, and I could talk about it forever. But I do think it is totally correlated to the social and mental and spiritual ails that are plaguing our society. And we're at the point where we have to do something.
Right. Yeah, I would love to go live in a cave, but Jackie wouldn't let me. And
you should ask.
I should ask nicely. Having been a seminarian, having been given some real intentional time of lengthy prayer, like one day silent retreat where we couldn't talk to each other. You couldn't listen.
We had a week of that.
Music. We built up to a 3-day. Then we did a 5-day. 5-day was the longest I ever did.
Yeah, nice.
And I was always kicking and screaming going into it. But by the end of it, I didn't want to come out of it.
Totally.
And now with children, I never get solitude. So
you are solitude deprivation to max.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel that term so much.
Yeah.
When we have priest friends come over, they're like, oh yeah, I just did like a 5-day silent retreat. I'm like,
yeah, bro.
What's it like, Father?
Yeah.
Tell me. And the need for silence. We don't even know who we are without that time by ourselves.
Yeah.
And so you've also got compounding that compounding effect upon a generation that with the confusion around my identity. And you're spending so much time on these devices versus being in yourself, in your body. And you're not mindfully eating. You're not mindfully like paying attention to the world around you. Everything is like, I can multitask, but you're never present to anything. And I'm guilty of it like anyone else.
Yep.
But I mean, it's like I have limited control over the phone. Let's put it that way. Now you look at anyone who's 20, 15, 12.
Grown up with this stuff. I mean, it's full-on addiction science at this point. But I mean, for me, Catholic Psych, I went through the Catholic Psych Institute. It was an incredible experience for me. And I realized largely, even with a smartphone that didn't have any of these addictive, apps, even though they literally create even the weather app to be addictive, with the doom, tornadoes and stuff. I mean, it's crazy once you start to study what these people are exploiting in us. But I just noticed even in myself, I was not, every sparing moment I was checking. And even this idea that we have to be available to people at all times, all day. And if I don't respond, I literally have friends text me now, ask me if I'm alive because I don't respond the day of, you know what I mean? it's just gotten really strange. And I think I want to create a life with my future family and my spouse that like we're able to utilize the good of technology while educating, my kids and family and living a life and working in the business, world that is effective while also having a real detachment from the addiction, And I love what you're talking about, the mindfulness. That's been huge for me. Because for me in the music world, man, it was the next gig, it was the next flight, it was the next song. I have a very hard time living in the moment. I'd say it's probably one of my biggest challenges right now, even just in my own vocation.
Being here with me.
Yeah.
Be here with me.
Be here.
Andrew.
Ever-present God, here with me now. Help me to be here with you. Like, yeah, I'm not in my capital V vocation. My vocation is love, but, I was in seminary, and that time was incredible for me, too, to detach. I read more than I've ever read before. The stories that are coming out of these kids experiencing just their own productivity, their own ability to concentrate, obviously, fighting these addictions to pornography, and just even that, what that's doing in our society is incredibly, intense to think about. But yeah, I do see at least some hope in the sense of, at least with Humanality, like we notice. I went up to 15 kids in high school and just told them about what I was doing with Humanality. I was like, how many of you would be willing to give up your smartphones right now? 13 out of 15 raised their hand. I mean, people are tired of the addiction. I think kids are tired of the bullying. I think they're tired. I mean, dude, when I got beat up at school and only at school. When I went home, no one bullied me. You couldn't AOL instant message that much bullying, okay? Like, that's where,
Well, it would take too long to
you had to
dial
connect.
up. And then if someone called your house, it would drop you.
Yeah,
so
right.
it was over and done there.
Yeah, but these kids are literally getting bullied 24/7, 365, and let's not even start on the blue light, Don't get me started on blue light and light.
For years, Andrew and I have also met, not just in these topics of faith, but health, when it comes to like blue light and like grounding, and
the sun,
electromagnetic stuff that's all around us. And so it's beautiful to see this flowering of your passions into now this work with Humanality and where you're applying it. And you see the need. It's overwhelmingly people are like, yes, please give me an alternative.
Yes.
And it's not like the parents demanding it. Like it is the parents, but also young people themselves. They're like, please, because it might require something radical to start.
Yes.
Like the goal is moderation. The goal is you have control. But if you're so in deep with it, it might require something that swings to the other end of the pendulum.
Yes, you have to.
It's like the purgative way. Like there is this new convert's zeal that almost has to happen where it does look extreme from the outside world to go from social media to no social media, to go from phone that can do anything to like dumb phone or flip phone.
Yes.
But that, especially, if there is full-blown addiction at play, that's maybe what it requires to get back in control is a total detox. And so you've got faith programs like Exodus 90 that are hitting a nerve for a reason.
Yep.
Because it is this, again, total body, human, like body and soul call to re-embrace fasting.
Yes.
For the appropriate feasting. But first you've got to like detach. You've got to be willing to take some cold showers. Physically, like metaphorically or literally, to get there. And it's been awesome to watch your journey too with this. Like, Andrew's on social media. Andrew's disappeared. Andrew's got a smartphone. Andrew's got no phone.
Right.
I don't know how to reach Andrew. Like, you're willing to do it.
Yeah.
And, kind of find the middle later on. But
yeah. I mean, most people, obviously, every time like they'd hear that, I was like, oh, Andrew's just too extreme or too radical. I mean, I knew early on that this was detrimental to my health and well-being and my spiritual life. So I got rid of the technologies completely. Now, I don't think most people are willing, because it's so scary. This is what was so crazy about this is like, because it's so deeply playing on human psychology, they have literally gotten down to the brainstem to find what will keep you most addicted for the longest period of time, which Cal Newport gives, I think, just 2 ideas that are going to keep you keep you addicted again by exploiting these vulnerabilities. And it's intermittent positive reinforcement So it's the unpredictability of a scrolling is way better and way more addictive than knowing what's going to happen. So it's this intermittent positive reinforcement and the drive for social approval. So I've noticed that if, unless you're business or you're an influencer or whatever, and you're making money through that way, if most people are willing, to just take a break, I think they're so scared to give up one of those things because it's so deeply ingrained in us to, like, what if I can't get liked or approved of what I'm doing? And, I noticed even in myself, like I'm playing in front of thousands of people at these events around the country, around the world, and I can feel in myself, I want to post this because I want people to see what I'm doing. Mm. And I want people to see that, like, I did it and I'm successful. And I felt that multiple times, and that's when I kind of knew, like, whoa, like, this is not what I want. And this is not what I want to be known for. And I don't want to be remembered for just playing in front of all these people. And I am doing this to make people think that what I'm doing is really cool. So that's when I got rid of it. But I'd say for most people, the biggest fear is that fear of missing out, which is funny. I've had so many friends like, oh my gosh, you had a child? Didn't know. Tell me about it. Wait, you went to Africa? Like, I literally had a buddy go to Africa. Didn't know. He called me, told me about the experience. It was awesome. Like, there's so many things like that. People just don't think we can live without it now. When in reality, I'd say for most people, this isn't for everybody, but I'd say for most people, moving forward, your life will be better without TikTok. I mean, I'm really convinced of that. Like, your life will be totally amazing without TikTok. It's like, there's great things. There's funny things. People love laughing. People love these videos. I love the funny memes. I'm not opposed to these things. It's so intermingled with so much addiction. It's hard to know,
right.
Where that line is. But for most people at this point, I think it's pretty clear the data is overwhelming. There is a deeply there's a deep problem, happening that's largely due to these devices. And I think moving forward, knowing and being educated in the reality that they are trying to create these to be addictive as possible, all the way down to the color, all the way down to the flashing, all the way down to the content.
The sounds.
All the way down to the sounds. Once I started to study that stuff, I was like, it wasn't as attractive, because I'm like, I like being free. Mm-hmm. And this is maybe what we'll end with. I love freedom in a lot of different ways. I don't like being a slave and addicted. And I noticed that for me, the intention behind these devices are for me to be addicted and for all my attention to be given to these entities. And I didn't like that. And I wanted to be free. And I've made those decisions. And also, like, dude, I'm gonna have a website. Like, I'm probably gonna do a podcast with health coaching stuff. Like, I think these long form things are great. I think YouTube's great. I think technology is amazing. But at least in regards to the addictive media platforms, I'm having a hard time at this point saying that it will do any good to individuals that are really looking to be free. Now, that's controversial, and I'm totally down to articulate that in a different way and maybe find, some good. I know, obviously, like Bishop Barron's very adamant about staying on those platforms. I think you can evangelize incredibly well without social media. And I found in my own life, I felt more effective insofar as that, like, that time when I was be scrolling myself and be worried about, oh my gosh, what do I say? What is it going to look like? I just didn't, like, my time was being allocated in different ways. So you really just have to take an inventory. Where's your value at? Where do you want to be free? And then start to make some real decisions in your life to where, like, okay, gaming's cool. I will allocate this amount of time to game, and then once that's done, that's done. You really can't tell a teenager to do that because they don't actually have the brain capacity, development to regulate that. So that's where a parent comes in. It's like, you got this time, you can do it at this time.
Right.
You can be on media at this time. So you do need some accompaniment, some accountability. I know we've been like accountability partners to each other and, purity and many other things. But I'm very hopeful in the sense that I think Humanality and my work with that and the health coaching, it's a positive approach to life, like knowing that there's so much more to live for. And like, I love being out in nature and the ocean and the sun. And also, like, I love reading and books and podcasts and I've overconsumed podcasts like crazy, you know what I mean? Where it's
impossible.
every drive, like now my drives, I have a light phone. I have nothing in my car.
Mm-hmm.
My cars are just silent, and just me. And that's just a choice that obviously no one needs to do that. But just the idea that like, okay, we're creating space and we're creating time to think and we're creating time to communicate with God. Like these things excite me, which once you experience them, you want them for other people. Just like any good movie that we watch or the gospel. It's like when you experience it, you want to share it. So that's why I want to end on freedom. I was going to pound that, but I know we can't pound the floor. But I think for freedom, Christ has set us free. And I think if we can utilize an intentional relationship with technology and an intentional relationship with our bodies and be mindful of what we're putting in, taking some apple cider vinegar shots, some nutrition, some exercise, some movement. You don't need to go become Arnold Schwarzenegger. Literally start with 3 times a day, a 10-minute walk. I guarantee you will feel better. Just 3 times a day, get outside for 10 minutes and go walk. That's going to be my prescription for your first to-do with Illumined Wellness. You're welcome.
Thanks, Coach.
That's for free. But, I appreciate, us having these conversations. And, my hope and prayer is that, like, we live fully alive, right? Like, this is what it means to be a follower of Jesus is to live different. And this is what I get. All this minimalism stuff, this is so radically different. Mm-hmm. This is so against the grain. For whatever reason, I thrive in that environment. Like, I enjoy that. But I know for a lot of people, this is a very scary thing to think that we can't be connected at all times. But you will be surprised that your disconnection and your unplugging will actually plug you into relationships that really matter, to your marriages that really matter, to your work that really matters. So I encourage, people listening to check out humanality.org. You can email me there. We want this to get at every university, left, right, religious, non-religious. We believe that every university student can experience an unplugged college experience. So if your university wants to check that out or you want to bring in Humanality, just email me, andrew@humanality.org. And I'd be excited to talk with you. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, thank you for helping us kick off year 2.
That's crazy.
I know, of the podcast. Thank you for your time here. And thank you for listening and for watching. Thank you for the patrons who are helping with all the production costs.
Pay them lots of money.
You guys,
this is very good.
You guys are a gift. And till next time, God bless.